so excited. I don't know, excited doesn't quite capture it. It's like my heart feels like it's expanding because I
Mm.
have with me my own mentor, my own former coach, but in my mind, she's still coaching me. We were just having a conversation about that. And her name is Maggie Reyes. Maggie, welcome to Negotiate Your Career Growth podcast and to tell our audience about all the amazing things you are is impossible. But Maggie Reyes, she is a life coach. She's a certified, I don't know, are you like double, triple certified master coach now?
Hi, everyone. So I'm a double certified coach in the sense that I did two full complete coach trainings, one of which was 600 hours.
Wow, 600 hours.
Um, and then advanced certifications, which we both have in feminist coaching. And I'm a coaching nerd and a relationship nerd. And for everyone who's listening right now, I think what's relevant to you listening to a podcast about negotiations is my career before I was a coach was in human resources. And I think there's so many overlaps and so many things that apply. What I currently do is I am a marriage coach. So I help women who are typically type A, very driven leaders have better relationships. So I think that's how I would introduce myself. Relationship nerd, coaching nerd. Hello.
I can so relate to you. And those type A people are listening to this podcast because they want to advance their career.
Yeah.
And, many of my listeners also want to enrich and expand and just improve their personal relationships, not just their working relationships. And sometimes their working relationships are personal relationships. But
Yeah.
in any case, we were just talking about how Maggie used to coach me. She coached me directly one on one when she used to
hmm
deign to coach people one on one before
I
she.
still do. I still have
Oh,
a handful of private clients. Who knows when you're listening to this where that will still be true. But in 2023, that is still
yeah.
true.
Okay. 2020, Maggie coached
Yeah.
me. I was
Yeah.
her client. I
Yeah.
got coached on my relationship, my personal romantic relationship, and it was life changing. But beyond that, she and I also, you and I also are
Yeah.
coaching nerds, relationship
Yes.
nerds. And so what I really took away was beyond the relationship, you helped me become a better coach.
Mm.
And even now, years into my coaching practice, whenever I have a tough day or like, oh, I could have done better, I ask myself, what would Maggie say? And Maggie, would you
Yes.
tell us one more time what this really means?
So, Jamie was telling me that, and what I said was, you can always use my voice. I'm happy for you to use it, but what you're really doing is you're asking yourself, what would the compassionate, loving, powerful part of me say? And you're just labeling that part of you Maggie, which is fine. But it's really what would you do when you are at your most compassionate, your most loving, and your most powerful?
Absolutely. And the thing that I learned, the biggest takeaway is that the relationship that you have with yourself, right,
Yes.
impacts, that is the core relationship. And then from there you can have a better working relationship with your employer. From there you could have a better romantic relationship, family relationship, friend relationships, right? But
Yes.
so many of us, because of gender socialization, because of patriarchal conditioning, we don't have a great relationship with ourselves. We don't know how to relate to ourselves really well. We don't know how to talk to ourselves from the most compassionate, powerful, loving place. And for that reason, asking myself, what would Maggie say, is like a hack.
Yes. It's like a way in. It's like a doorway.
Yeah.
100%. I love it.
Yeah. And so for people who are listening or watching this, you might even think about who is a person that I admire. And sometimes when I ask my clients, who's been a great leader to you? Who's been a great mentor for you? Sometimes they tell me it's their rabbi. Sometimes they tell me it was a
hmm
previous boss. Sometimes they tell me it was their sister, right? So you could
hmm
even ask yourself, okay, what would that person say to me now? What do you think
hmm
about that?
Oh my gosh, I had a situation once in a
Yeah.
Facebook group. There was drama in a group that I
Okay.
was in. And I had a situation once where I was super triggered about this thing that happened. And I sat myself down and I said, how would Oprah handle this? Like, if Oprah was quote unquote attacked, which is the way I felt that day, how would she respond? And it was such an eye-opening thing because it wasn't my natural response. Like my natural response would have been like, well, right back. And Oprah, in my mind, was like, you would not concern yourself with such matters. You have more important things to do in your life. And I was very not calm in that situation, but my inner Oprah was very calm, very centered, and was just like, this is just not something that's worth your time. Why are you wasting any time on this at all? And that was such an eye-opening thing to see that I could access a different voice inside of myself and that I could be highly activated, but that part of me could be calm at the
Mm,
same time. So that
yeah.
is my my
So
example
good.
for that.
I love that. I love that. So, yes, even if you are extremely, extremely talented at coaching and mentoring people, you can
Yeah.
get triggered, you can get activated, and you can also make a conscious decision about which part of it, which voice you choose. So good. Thank you for sharing
Yes.
that. But let's
Totally.
go back to the beginning. Let's go back to,
Yes.
yeah, tell us more about your journey. You started in HR, right? You started in HR. You were working for a luxury cruise line. I heard.
Yes. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit right before that. So I fell into working in HR when I was 21 years old. I started as a receptionist in a law firm that did corporate transactional law. And I worked my way up from receptionist to training director over the course of about 9.5 or so years. And so I was training lawyers. So you can just imagine that's like herding cats, be the same thing. And then from that training position, I realized I wanted to do something different, something more. And then I left that role and I ended up in the cruise industry. And I just want to normalize like career changes, hiccups, side lateral moves, like all those things. When I left that job, I went to another job that did not work out, which
Mm.
will be the job that shall not be mentioned, that did not work out. And then I went to a temp agency. And remember, I had left as a training director of this law firm, and now I'm like temping. And I was like, well, this is what I'm doing now. And I went to a temp agency and they placed me at a cruise line where I was like the temp that never went away. So I was there for like almost a year and my boss at the time was like, I'm gonna find the budget to keep you. Like, if you're able to be patient with me, like I will keep you. And she did. And then I stayed there for about 6 years, which was amazing. And then from there, I went to work at a beautiful company. It's called The World, which was kind of fun because then I was like the HR manager for The World. Be like a fun little way to introduce myself to people. And The World is a luxury residential ship. So it's the size of a cruise ship, but it has like multi-million dollar residences on it. And that was my last job in HR before I became a life coach. So um, that's a little like the shortened version of lots of drama and high points and low points and things like that. But one of the things I think is super relevant to your podcast, to everyone who's listening, is one of the things that happened at the world that I think is useful to think about when you think about negotiating
Mm.
is someone in a different department got promoted while I was there. And I went to my boss, inspired by seeing this person get promoted. And well, first I went through, it's an injustice. I should have been promoted. Da, da, da. I went through like all of the levels
They should have
of,
given it to me without me asking for it.
right, they should have given it to me without me asking for it. Exactly right. So I calmed myself down and then I got strategic and I went to my boss. And what I said was, instead of saying I deserve it, more than this person or less than whatever than this person, instead of comparing myself to other situations that had really nothing to do with me, I went to my boss and I said, what are the milestones I would need to reach in my role to be considered for a promotion?
So good. I'm just going to echo that so people can really take that and maybe write it
Yeah,
down. What are
yeah,
the milestones that I would need to reach in order for me to be considered for a promotion? So good.
yes. And at the moment, it was kind of like a surprise to my boss. She didn't know I was going to ask her that. And she said, well, let me think about it. And so she did. So it's not like, oh, fairy story tale, I just asked and then it was there. She thought about it. We met again a few times and then we made a plan together. And we said this milestone and that milestone. And then, everybody in a corporate environment has to justify their decision or their request or for funds or whatever for the budget to someone else. So she's like, how do we make this, undeniable, right? What are the milestones that you would reach that would be like, of course? anyone would approve this. Anyone would be happy to say yes to this plan.
Undeniable. I like that. Yeah.
Undeniable. So that's a great way to think about for whatever you're working on in your career in your life right now is like if you want something like how could I be the undeniable choice for that thing?
Yeah.
Um and so that's what we did. And so I did the milestones and I got promoted. And what was really interesting is the place I used to work before, I had applied for promotions. They had a very corporate setting where you had to, it wasn't like you talked to your boss. It was like you applied for the positions that were open that were higher than yours. It was sort of like
Mhm.
super, super, super structured. And there were a couple times I applied for things and I never got them.
Mm.
And I think this is also super important for everyone listening is that it could be the place you are right now is not the place where you're going to grow because I had worked there for 6 years and I did get promoted within my role multiple times, like from like one, two, and three of what I was doing. But it was very clear to me that I wasn't going to go beyond that in the current structure that they had. And for me, it was really essential to like go somewhere else and grow there. And so within a year of working there, I got promoted. It
Beautiful.
was very fast. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, I love that. And I just helped a client. I help smart
Yeah.
women who hate office politics get promoted and better paid. And I just helped a client get another bump. Like last year, she got
Yes.
promoted in title,
Yes.
but this year she made sure that she got the pay band bump that she didn't get
Yes.
last year, right? So it's like very
Yes.
strategic and thinking about from HR perspective, like what are
Yes.
all the levers? What are the milestones? What are metrics? What are specific things that we can negotiate to continue growing in your career? And like you said, sometimes the best move
Yes.
is to vote with your feet.
Yes, sometimes the
Yeah.
best move is to vote with your feet. And there's this sometimes, I'd love to hear what you think about this, Jamie. Sometimes it is good for you to be patient and work with someone, like when that person said, I'm going to find the budget for you, or when my boss said, let me think about it, we'll make a plan. Sometimes patience is part of the process, but I think especially as women, anyone who's socialized as a woman, sometimes we excess on being too patient and so even when I'm coaching someone in their marriage, I think about milestones in so many different ways. And I think about what can we look at as progress points? What can we see as milestones that things are going in the direction I want to go? So your client who got the title change, it's like, okay, this is a milestone. We're going in the direction I want to go. I'm going to be a little bit more patient to see how the money pans out if I like what I'm doing and I want to do more of that before I vote with my feet. I'd love to hear your thoughts about that like nuance of when is it good to be patient and when is it good to make a change, to be yeah.
I love this question. And
Yeah.
I think the answer is what are your thoughts about loyalty? Because
Hmm.
in my career, I have encountered extremely hardworking, diligent, dedicated professionals who are women and who would say, but I have to be loyal. And then
Mm.
sometimes that loyalty is an
Hmm.
impact of gender socialization where you're taught to like keep your head down, do good work,
Mm.
wait for somebody to give you that recognition.
Mm.
Carol Frolinger, she's a negotiation scholar, she calls it tiara syndrome. But when we think I have to be patient and I have to be loyal, and I think that's when you want to
Mm.
question that thought because
Mhm.
loyalty is never two-sided.
Mhm. Oh, that's so good. Am I being loyal to myself while
Or
I'm
am I
being
being,
loyal, like that is so good. Okay, I'm processing this for a second. I
yeah,
could be loyal to the person and I can be loyal to myself. And if I'm being loyal to the person at the exclusion of being loyal to myself,
that's it.
everybody needs to slow down and check on what's happening. Yeah.
Right. Is this patience sort of actually like self-negation that's
Yeah.
being presented as patience? Whereas the opposite would be sometimes when you're like, well, if they don't give me a promotion this year, I'm just going to quit, or I'm out the door if they're not going to give me what I want, right? That's like the extreme opposite end of that spectrum, where
Yeah.
it's all about me as opposed
Right.
to, am I
Yeah.
willing to figure out like what's going on beyond this team, beyond my work situation, what's happening in the economy, what's happening in the department, what's happening in the company, right? Am I curious to find out about what else is happening and
Yeah.
be willing to work that through, right? I think in that case, that's where patience will really bear great fruits because your willingness
Yes.
to think through strategically and objectively all the different factors will not only help you get the goal that you want, but help you become a better leader, a better team
Yes.
leader, a better company leader, a better industry leader in the process. So, yeah, I think that's my answer.
I love it so much. And as you were talking, I was thinking there's such a beautiful parallel between marriage or long-term relationships with someone. It's like really the same. It's these are the things that I want and I value. Am I being loyal to myself while I'm being loyal to the other person? Am I seeing milestones of progress? Are we moving towards those things or not? And that can so deeply inform how you make decisions about what you want next and how you decide whether you stay or go or what staying looks like. Even in a job, right? What staying looks like might be different depending on where you are and the milestones that you've reached and all that. Oh, I love it. Okay, what's
Yes, so
next? I
good.
know you had stuff you wanted to talk about.
Yes, I have learned so many amazing concepts and frameworks from directly from Maggie that I have incorporated, that I have relayed onto my own clients. I'd be like, hey, my mentor Maggie Reyes taught me this when I was getting coached on my relationship. And one of them is the power of one. It's
Yes.
such a powerful concept, the power of one. And I want to discuss with you how, again, this applies not just to relationships, romantic marriage relationships,
Mhm,
but in all sorts of relationships,
mhm.
including work, because work is a human ecosystem, right? So tell us about the
Yes.
power of one and what it means.
Okay, so what's unique about the power of one is the way that I teach it. It actually is a theory or a hypothesis that exists in psychology that's based on systems theory. And the hypothesis is when one element of a system changes, the other elements in the system will respond to that change. So how they respond to that change is going to be different in different scenarios, but they will always respond to that change. So if you imagine if you're at work, and I used to do this when I was at work, imagine it's Friday and you bring donuts for everybody, right? And then everybody, I said it, and then for those listening on audio, Jamie immediately smiled. Immediately, it's like that warm, fuzzy feeling, oh, donuts, yay, right? One person will have an impact on the other people just by bringing that donut energy, whatever we want it to be. We're having a meeting, everybody's freaking out about the budget for next year, and then one person is like, let's get to it. We're going to figure it out. And all of a sudden, the energy shifts. That's like the power of when, like at work, there are very practical, simple things that you can do at work that would bring the power of one to work, and then you see how people respond. So I'm going to pause there. What are your thoughts?
I find that so fascinating. I love that you brought the donut analogy to describe power of one
Yeah,
because another client of mine, she's a leader in the medical field, and
yeah,
she presented to me, this is like a counterpoint.
yeah.
And she described to me how she read this Cornell University research paper that talks about the status leveling burden of high status women.
Mhm,
And really simply put, the research talked about how high powered surgeons, women surgeons, they feel this pressure to like make nice and to do
mhm,
extra stuff
mhm,
to placate or to be
mhm,
friendly with the nurses and this other technical staff, tech
mhm,
staff.
mhm,
Otherwise, there's rife, there's inter
mhm,
professional
mhm.
strife, and then it gets hard for the surgeon to advance her career. And so she's like, I don't want to bring donuts. Right? But what
I
you're
love it.
saying, I
Yeah.
love what you're saying because it's
Mm.
like donuts can just be donuts. You could see it
Yes.
as a power move,
Yeah.
or you can also see it as it's a status leveling move, right? It's like how we frame it, how we think about it totally impacts
Mhm.
how we have
Yeah.
that experience.
And I want to say, I love that you brought this into the conversation because it's never about doing things that are not genuine to you. So the person who doesn't bring donuts could be a very like no nonsense direct person who doesn't bring donuts, but then mentors her residents and
That's right.
teaches them how to get what they need so that they can enjoy their career,
That's right.
or looks out and is an advocate for the nurses when they're being overworked or overscheduled or something. So like bringing donuts is like a metaphor. You can actually do it, but it's also a metaphor for the way you lead will impact everyone else around you. And so
Yeah.
you could lead in a very no nonsense way, and you can have someone completely ineffectual who brings donuts every week and doesn't isn't actually a good leader, right? So
Right.
I love having the nuance of holding these two things. I think they're very connected.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think,
And
yes,
yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Well, what I was going to add is that status leveler to me, it's sexism, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It's
just
internalized.
it's the
Internalized.
internalized
Mhm.
sexism of if a male doctor is direct and to the point, and even abrasive, that, oh, that's just how he is, and we just put up with it. And if a woman is direct and to the point and abrasive, oh, there's a problem. She needs some kind of extra support, right? It's a very, I haven't read that particular research study, but it's just sexism is so rampant and so internalized that then we don't even call it out as as okay, we can call it whatever we want, but that's still sexism.
Yeah. And we don't have to
Yeah,
buy into that. But
yeah,
I think
yeah,
unintentionally detracted
yeah,
us from the power of
yeah,
one,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
the system theory, which is
Yeah,
that even one aspect of the system can have an impact on
the
the
rest.
entire system when it
Yes,
chooses to change, when it chooses a different
yes.
set of behavior. Is that right?
Yes, and that's exactly right. And so in marriage, what happens is a lot of times I'll talk with people where maybe they're arguing all the time or they're never communicating. Let's take those two examples. And then I will help whoever I'm helping either argue less, be more calm, engage differently, or if they're never communicating, what can we communicate about? What can we start connecting over? So they change their approach. And then the person doesn't have to have done hours of coaching with me or done whatever the curriculum is. The person is just responding to how this person is showing up. So that's how it would be on a personal level. On a work level, absolutely, we've heard for years and years and years, right? That idea of like show up for the job that you want, right? In HR, we'd have this dynamic, which I'm sure we can talk about now next, which is the person who wants to get promoted who does not lift a finger, doesn't do anything particularly special, and comes to you and says, "Well, when you give me the job, then I will show you how great at the job I will be," versus the person who says, "I want that job. What do I need to do to get that job? Do I need to volunteer for a project? Do I need to show you something different? What do you want to see in my next project that would put me into consideration for these other types of projects?" Like showing up for the thing you want. Same power of one. You have now taken charge of your career, are directing your career versus having your career be directed by people who don't care about your career.
So good. So good. Direct your career instead of having your career directed by people who don't care about your career. I wanted to just call
Yeah,
that out and echo
yeah,
it again.
yeah.
So good. And in fact, I want to talk to you about this anger scale that I heard
Yes.
you teach on in your
Yes.
podcast,
Mhm.
your really great
Mhm.
podcast, the Marriage Life Coach podcast. Check it out.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think it's really relevant because I work with people who hate office politics. I
Yeah.
help smart women who hate office
Yeah.
politics. And when you're a woman,
Yeah.
right, not only are you contending with office politics, you're contending with unconscious biases, sexism,
Mhm.
racism, all the is ageism, right?
Mhm.
And so it is it is enervating. It can be. You can be like super anger producing. And in
Mhm.
fact, I want to suggest like
Mhm.
it's sometimes I have to coach my clients to be like, it's okay for you to be angry about this,
Mhm.
right? Instead of like beating yourself up, instead of
Mhm.
second guessing yourself, ruminating, which is what I
Mhm.
used to do, it's
Mhm.
okay for you to be angry about it. But I wanted to talk to you because about the anger scale, because when I heard it described on your podcast, I was like, whoa, this is an eye opener.
Mm.
And
It was for me
yeah,
too. So,
yeah,
so here's what happened. I was coaching someone who's very upset at her husband at the time,
yeah.
and what she would do, and everybody think about if you do this too, everything was the same level of awful. So if
Mm,
he left his socks on the floor, that was equally as bad as if he like forgot to mail the check for the electricity that month or something. Like back when we
mm,
had checks. So it was everything was always same level of anger. But if you think about the things that happen, in the day-to-day life,
mm.
and we think on a scale of 1 to 10, like forgetting to make sure we have electricity is probably a 9 for me, and leaving your socks on the floor might be a 2 or a 3 for me, right? But do I want to get equally as upset about these things. So I was coaching her and we were trying to work through like how could she manage her vast amounts of anger about all these different things, right? Because more than one thing was happening at the same time. Just
Mm.
like at work, right? I've had
Yeah.
difficult bosses, I've had difficult coworkers.
Yeah.
I very vividly remember seething sitting in a cubicle next to someone who was just on her personal calls all day. And I'm like, how is it possible that we both collect a paycheck and at the end of the 2 weeks, she's just been in personal calls all day and I've been like working away, right? Like I remember that feeling of seething. I wish I had the anger scale back then, but I didn't. Anyway, so I was talking to my client, and we just, in that moment, I was like, this is what you're going to do for homework this week. You're going to use a scale of 1 to 10, and you're not going to change anything about what you're doing with your husband. You're just going to decide, is this a 9? Is this a 2? Is this a 3? How angry do I want to be about this thing?
Can I just
And
pause you right there?
yeah, yeah,
Because it's so genius. You're probably like not even thinking about it, but that question, how much anger do I
yeah,
want to have? Right?
about this.
You're
Yes,
presupposing, which you're
yes,
just informing us that we
yes.
have agency.
Yes! I'm all about agency. Yes.
We have agency over how much anger, how much emotional energy we give out or
Yes.
expend on these things that are not always in our control. Like I remember I just
Yes.
had a conversation with somebody who was telling me when she worked in finance, her comments about her shoes from the boss who never gave her any sort of support, that just like really it was like the tipping point. It was the thing that like she just remembers, even though there were so many instances where
Yeah.
this boss was absent in terms of support and
Yeah.
all that. But I recall too, I recall, hearing a comment about I wore a lacy top once and it was like, I don't know. It was, and my anger was just like through the roof. But if we had the
Yes.
anger scale, I could have asked myself, how angry do I want to be?
About this.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Tell us more.
So we pause. First of all, we pause and breathe.
Yeah.
Physiologically, we pause. We take
Everyone
a
do this
breath.
together with us.
Let's do it together. We're think about the thing that's making you angry right now. Let's do it together. Think about that thing. Maybe it was on your mind last night. Maybe it was on your mind this morning when you started listening to the podcast, right? That thing. Take a moment and we're just going to take a breath. And now we're going to ask ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, how angry do I want to be about this? And no, there's no wrong number. You could be maximum angry about something that I might not be maximum angry, but that's okay. It's just how angry do I want to be about this? And then here's the part that requires discipline. It requires intention. It requires like mental and emotional work from our part. The part is this. I usually use 6 as my barometer, but you can use any of the numbers between 1 and 10. If it's a 6 or below, my next action, once I've given it a number, is to do nothing. Nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. And I remember talking to my client about it. She was like, what do you mean nothing? I'm angry. It's a 4. It's a very strong 4. Like, here's the thing. When we're angry about everything and we try to like win every battle, we lose all the battles. We all know this. We've all experienced it. We try to fight every battle, we just lose all of them. When we're able to let some of those battles go, put them to the side, and then pick the ones that are worth winning, that are worth fighting for, that are worth going up for over and over and over and over again, we increase our chances of getting more of what we want. And for me, as a coach, my number one goal in life is to help my clients get more of what they want. Jamie, same.
Yes.
Right? That's all we want. All the things we teach you and all the things we talk about is to help you get more of what you want. So I have found that if you only action the ones that are like 6 and above, you get more of what you want. Now, actioning doesn't mean I'm going to go to my boss's office and go off on a tirade or whatever about the injustice of the thing. Actioning is sometimes talking to your coach. Sometimes it's deciding strategically what's the best move here. Sometimes it's making a strategy for how you want to proceed. Sometimes it is, speaking to the person, setting a boundary, talking about the lacy top. It's like, listen, when you have feedback about my actual work product, come and see me. You have any comments about my fashion style, you let me know when that's part of my job description and we can discuss it then. Right? Like sometimes it is that, but many, many times it's pausing, breathing, and then deciding what's going to help me get more of what I want and then doing that, whatever that looks like.
So good. So good. I love that. And I think this can help us create more self-empowerment, free up mental and emotional bandwidth, right? Not just in your marriage, but in so many different types of relationships, including the ones you have at work or with work. Sometimes you
Yes.
could be angry with your work.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%. And sometimes it's true in marriages and long-term relationships, and it's true in work situations. Sometimes there's many pieces of your job you actually love
Yeah.
and that are fulfilling and that you do enjoy doing and that you want to keep doing. And there's one or two pieces, like the politics, for example, that are just you have no patience for. You just have, I don't know, the older that I get, the zero tolerance I have for like anything that sounds even remotely like politics, right? It's like, are we genuinely authentic trying to create something here with whatever we're working on at work? Anything else I just don't have the bandwidth for.
You know, this
Yeah.
reminds me, I did have a client who was upset that she went to a meeting, she made a comment, again, a
Hmm.
comment that if it came from a man would have just been like, yeah, sure, you're right. But then she
Hmm.
made a comment and people are like, what? Right?
Hmm.
And the people are saying, oh, you got to do X, Y, and Z. You got to do extra stuff because there's something wrong with you because you're making these comments, right? And my client, actually, through the course of coaching, I just offered her, actually doing nothing is also doing something,
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
she realized her anger about it was actually quite low, because she realized at the end of the
Hmm.
day, bigger picture, it was not that big of a deal. And people who
Hmm.
really had a say in the course of her career, they all had her back and they're like, oh, we got you. Yeah, that was strange, we don't know why that happened, but we've got you. So she decided to do nothing, and that actually became like a blessing. She's like, oh yeah, doing nothing is doing something. I don't have to exacerbate. And then
Hmm.
she ended up taking a different approach, not the one all these like huff and puff
Hmm.
people were suggesting to her. And she
Hmm.
just made her working relationship even better by showing up with greater agency, more bandwidth, you know, less activation, and more just like, we're all experts here. We're all
Hmm.
just experts dealing with other experts. So thank you for sharing that. That's so
Yeah.
good.
Love
Yeah.
it.
So let's talk about the power, the concept of requests, not demands. So I remember when you taught it to me, I
Hmm.
was like, this is genius negotiation advice. Right? This is what integrative mutual benefit negotiation is all about. And
Hmm.
I absolutely love it. And so
Hmm.
maybe we can zoom out and maybe you can tell us a little bit more what, you know,
Hmm.
what you mean by requests, not demands. And I think you had another part to that. It was like no
Hmm.
complaints, and there was, instead of
Oh,
complaints,
yes.
there was
Okay,
something else.
so requests and demands are one thing, and then
Yeah.
another thing that I teach is no complaining and no defending, which is
Yeah.
probably really useful at work. So we can talk about that next. But
Yeah.
request versus demands is something that we often don't notice. It's very invisible to us, where we are making demands, whether at work or at home, and they sound like commands, right? And if we have subordinates, if we have people who report into us, sometimes it's fine that it sounds like like go do this, right? It's like it's not universal that you always need to do it in a particular way. There's always nuance in anything that I'm talking about. But request versus demands very specifically is when we make a demand, there's usually an emotional price to pay for the other person if they tell us no or if they give us an answer that we don't like. So we give them the side eye, we make a face, maybe we retreat or we get argumentative. There's just an emotional price to pay. And that's how you know that you're making a demand, is if then your next thing that you do is some kind of punishment, some kind of emotional, verbal, actionable punishment to the person. A request is something that includes a certain level of detachment. So in a request, there's no emotional price to pay at the end, whatever answer the person gives you. The person could say yes, they could say no. It doesn't matter. And what happens is so many times in relationships, and if you think about how you like to be asked for things, I think it's very clear. Like when I think about, I never like to be told. I always like to be asked, right? I can immediately know if somebody's telling me or asking me right away, and I can immediately know what I respond better to. If we're able to switch on that part of our self-awareness and we look, am I making requests all the time or am I making demands all the time? When we're able to do that, we're able to create a better relationship with whoever we're asking things from, even when they are your subordinates, even when they do report to you. The more you make requests and negotiate how the thing is executed, what does it look like? In my role in HR, and now as a boss having a team that helps me with my business, I think a lot about the front lines. Like I might want something executed, but I don't really know what it takes to execute that. And so I like asking people, well, how long does it take? What does it look like? What would it require of us to do this thing? And I'll have some wild ideas of how I think something should be done. And they'll tell me, actually, that would take this, this, and this. Do you want to use our time and our resources to do that? We could also do this, and that could be done in half an hour. And we're like, oh, that collaborative, when you make it a request, you invite collaboration. When you make it a demand, it becomes very dictatorial. And for most of us that want agency and liberation and equality, being dictatorial isn't what we really want. We just don't notice we're doing it.
I love this, and I'm curious
Yes.
because I was listening to you and I was thinking about how many people who work in organizations or who work for anyone else,
Yeah.
they would love to get more requests,
Yeah.
but they feel like they're receiving more demands.
Yeah.
And maybe
Mhm.
the punishment isn't always emotional. And sometimes it is, sometimes it can
Yeah.
be emotional, sometimes, or it can be in terms of like gender backlash, for
Yeah.
example, where you feel
Uh-huh.
like, they made this demand and you said, no, that's not doable right now. And,
Yeah.
your work assignments got
Yeah.
reassigned or
Mhm.
you get reassigned, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
and so I love requests, not demands, from the perspective of the person who has the
Mhm.
agency to make requests and not
Mhm.
demands. And I'm just curious from your experience, and maybe this comes up in marriage coaching
Mhm.
too, where people feel like they're on the other side of demands.
Yeah. What do we do when we're on the
What do
other
we
side of
do?
demands? Well,
Yeah.
first of all, you learn to negotiate.
Yes.
I mean, really, fundamentally, that's one of the things that you do is you learn to negotiate, you learn to communicate differently, and then see what happens when you do that. And I think we were talking earlier about the milestones, right? You decide
Mm.
what matters to you. You decide, okay, this person I work with is very demanding, like literally demanding, but I like 15 other parts of the job, so I'll deal with it. Or I like 15 other parts of the job, but not enough to make up for how demanding this person or the situation or whatever it is. And so that I think it just influences our choices. Sometimes you work with it, and sometimes you have to vote with your feet, like you said earlier.
Yes,
So
totally.
that's what comes to mind for me is when you're on the other end of that, um, is it demands all the time? Is it demands when there's a deadline? It's like we want to put some measurement around what is the nature and sort of the texture of these demands.
Oh,
Are
now that
they? Yeah,
yes,
go ahead.
I recall you coached me on this, and I thought it was so brilliant and genius. Like you observe a pattern of behavior, and then you
Yes.
ask yourself, what is the frequency? What is
Yes.
the context? Right?
Yes.
And I think
Yes.
there was one more
The
measurement.
intensity.
The
Yes. Mhm.
intensity, frequency,
Yes.
context, intensity, right? So that
Yes.
because we have a tendency to sort of generalize or
Yes.
assume, oh, this person's just always demanding. Oh, here they are dropping
Mhm.
socks on the floor. They're so demanding, right? I know that's not a great analogy, but you get my
Yeah.
drift, right? We have a
Yeah.
tendency to sort of make a blanket statement. And I thought that was
Mhm.
so genius how you coached me to think about what
Yeah.
is the frequency, intensity, context.
And that I call it scope. So when I was in HR, we thought about the scope of a role and the scope of different projects. And so for me in relationships, I think about this frequency and intensity and the context as what is the scope of this? Like how often does it happen? If it happens once a quarter and I can deal with it and it's fine, that's one thing. If it's happening every day, multiple times a day, that will impact how I decide what I'm going to do next about it. So that's why frequency matters.
Mm.
And then intensity is like maybe it does happen once a quarter, but then when it happens, I have no agency at all. And I start missing, family events or important things for me, or my health starts to suffer or something like that. So that's why intensity also matters. We want to measure that together. And I think if you put both of those together, then you arrive at the context in which this is happening, and then you can make a decision.
So good. I hope everyone's taking notes here. And what I'm taking away is what Maggie, what you do is like you help us approach a scientific mindset
Hmm.
to the art of love.
I like to mix evidence-based things with intuition and your highest inner wisdom and
Yes.
have the marriage or the complement of all those things. Sometimes you'll have a very evidence-based kind of idea and you'll just be like, no, it's just not right for me.
Yeah.
Always listen to that. Or
Yeah.
you'll have all the evidence that something is a bad idea and you'll be like, no, I believe in this. I'm 100% a yes, even though it doesn't make sense on paper. Always listen to that.
Yeah.
But when we're not sure what to listen to, having some of these anchor points to help us decide, I
Yeah.
have found very useful just for me personally, and then very useful when I'm talking to a client and sort of working through something. It's like in the absence of knowing what to do, what's the frequency? What's the intensity? Let's check.
Yeah. Yeah. And like for me, if you coach with Maggie, not only will your relationships improve, your career will improve as well.
Okay, that
Because
is
it's
the
a meta
truth.
skill. It's a
That
meta
is
skill.
you're building the meta skill. Once you've said
Yeah.
no to the hardest person in your life to say no to, which is usually your partner, it's so much easier to say no to your boss or to your coworker. Like once you've had a
Yeah.
really difficult conversation about something really intimate that you hold with a lot of tenderness, it's so much easier to then talk about a deadline at work. So it's very common. You sort of enter through any door.
Yeah.
And so
Totally.
it's same, like when you work with Jamie and you negotiate for a better salary at work or for a promotion, and then you have to talk to like, I don't know, the head of the soccer team for your kid. It's just so much easier to negotiate over there because you've practiced over
Yes.
here.
And my clients do tell me that. They
Yeah.
tell me, oh, I advocated for myself for the first time in my life. And it was nerve-wracking, but I did it. And then I rode that wave to securing my
Yes.
dream job or having a tough conversation with my significant other. So you're right. So good. Okay.
Yeah.
So before we wrap up, I want to
Yes.
ask you a personal question. Is that
Okay.
okay?
Yeah.
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 You and I, we share a lot in common. We're both coaches. We're both coaching nerds, relationship nerds. And I learned that we're both highly sensitive people.
Yes.
Yeah. And we're also, people of color.
Hmm.
And so I'm really curious, like, what have you found to be useful in helping you balance who you are as a highly sensitive person, somebody who
Hmm.
um maybe you can tell us a bit more, but what I understand it to be is like it's like sensory inputs a little
Hmm.
bit is like a
Hmm.
lot for us.
Yes.
And
That's
that's why,
exactly it. Hmm.
yeah, that's why you don't usually find me and
Hmm.
Maggie in loud bars. It's just way too much. I just fall asleep.
No, exactly. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. And at the same time, you and I, we work with type A people, type A women,
Hmm.
because we are sort of that characteristic as well. We're
Yeah.
very ambitious, we're very driven. And so I'm just curious, what have you found to be helpful? I'm asking for a friend who's me.
So first of all, so highly sensitive, the HSP, a highly sensitive person. There's actually a
Yeah,
quiz online you can take. You can Google it, and there was like 26 characteristics. And I took the
yeah,
quiz, and I had like 24 out of 26. But when I read the things to my husband, who like observes me, all the time, he's like, "Oh yes, yes, uh-huh, yes." So it's kind of like we can see. So my example for anyone listening, and that maybe this is the first time you've ever heard of this is if I go to Macy's on a Saturday and they have the announcements in one ear and music from the perfume area, but then a different music from the shoe area, I that is too much for me. I literally have to leave the store. So I will go at off hours when everything is calmer and there's like literally less sensory input to
yeah,
process. That's just to give you an example of like what does that mean. So the for me, knowing that I'm a highly sensitive person allows me to do things like that, like decide at what hours I will go to a place. I might love a restaurant. So like Cubans, which I am Cuban American. So I am My dad is from the Philippines, my mom is from Cuba, and I was born in Puerto Rico. So I'm a very international person. But where I grew up was in my Cuban culture, which is very loud, like actually loud of noise level. And if you go to a Cuban restaurant on a Saturday afternoon, that is the loudest place you'll ever be. So knowing that I'm sensitive to that, before I had no words, I didn't really know why I didn't like to go at that time. But now I just go earlier or later. Like I help myself manage some of that stimulus in order to enjoy the experience more, in order to be able to still have, the whatever the food I like or the experience I want or whatever that may be. So that's one way, is having awareness about what the challenge is that helps me sort of solve for that challenge.
I love that. I love that. It's like, I think we're going to
Mhm.
end where we started, which is,
Perfect. Yeah.
about the relationship with yourself, about,
Yes.
right? Thinking about which, where's that voice, or what is that voice that is most
Yes.
compassionate, loving, and powerful, right? And it's like
Yes.
acknowledging and owning, yeah, we have these HSP, highly sensitive people characteristics, and we acknowledge it. We don't judge ourselves. We accept it, and then from there, from a place of power, we make decisions about how and when we go about in the world.
Yes. Beautifully said. Yes.
So please tell us, Maggie. I am so happy that we had this conversation. You have taught me again. This was like an amazing refresher for me of all the genius of Maggie. Um, Tell us, where can folks go? Where can smart type A women go to find out and learn more about you and the amazing coaching work that you do?
So the first place is my website. It's very simple. It's maggiereyes.com. So REYES.com, MAGGIE, for everyone who's listening. And you'll see whatever I'm up to there. And I love Instagram. So I'm on Instagram at the Maggie Reyes. So if you're listening to us now and you loved what we talked about, I'd love to hear your favorite takeaway. You can tag us on Instagram and we'll be so delighted to hear what your favorite takeaway from today was. So you can definitely find me there. And then, as you mentioned earlier in the episode, I host a podcast. It's called The Marriage Life Coach Podcast. And there, all the examples are related somehow to like long-term relationships. So if that's something that is of interest to you, you will love it. If that's not something of interest to you, that's okay. I just want you to know what to expect if you subscribe.
Thank you so much, Maggie.
Bye, everyone.